So I guess we'll get started. It's about 12:05. People will trickle in as they trickle in. So hello, everybody. My name is Jelani, and welcome to the 14th episode of the DeSci Rising series put on by DeSci World, where our goal here is to provide an opportunity for many of the wonderful projects that on our growing DeSci World dashboard to just formally introduce themselves, update their progress, highlight their achievements, and just generally engage with both the DeSci world and wider DeSci community. Now, as always, the idea behind all of this is that at DeSci World, we very much believe that more than the tech, more than the funding, it is the community using these tools that will usher in many of the changes that we're looking for DeSci to bring to the various legacy STEM industries. Now, this particular project actually intones that very well. And so today I have the very great pleasure of speaking with Harry, also known as Plant Boy, who is the founder and project manager of PlantGang, a decentralized community of researchers, educators, and explorers that are building the herbarium of the metaverse, a virtual space to both view and research plant specimens that have been collected from around the world. Now, alongside Harry, we potentially here have Zeiss, who is a representative of Metropolis World, a metaverse project consisting of a 360-degree curated universe that blends unique opportunities and properties like e-commerce, gaming, art, and now science, as well as other experiences that kind of span both the digital and physical world. And so with that, welcome Harry and welcome Zeiss, if you can speak. And thank you both for taking the time to help us learn more about yourselves, but also your respective projects.
Hello, how's it going? Thank you for having me here. What an intro. Appreciate that. And yeah, excited to just answer any questions, speak a bit more on kind of what we're trying to build at Plant Gang, and hopefully get people as excited as I am about this future to kind of decentralize science and rethink some of these broken systems in exciting ways, to engage people across the globe in something hopefully that will be quite impactful.
Absolutely. I think I'm definitely super excited, and there's a few touch points that I want to talk about with regards to the project. But Zeiss, if you can speak, do you want to introduce yourself? All right, Zeiss. Oh, there you go.
I'm okay to speak about the Metropolis world side of things if Zeus is unable to speak right now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's having any problems, but yeah, the Metropolis world is an exciting collaboration we're having right now. They're building out this amazing metaverse space in Unreal Engine, where we're going to be able to have these immersive 3D environments, and that's one of these places where we're launching this virtual herbarium of the metaverse, an interactive 3D environment where you can look at plant specimens, learn about science, have educational elements weaved in there, have talks on conservation, on impactful projects, and use it as a space within the metaverse to kind of push these interesting areas of DeSci onto maybe some people that might not normally kind of understand or look into this area of research. So we're really excited about that. Right now, we've got like a 6-day quest, and we're on day 4 of our 6-day quest, where we're going through the story of our first expedition with Plant Gang through the Costa Rican rainforest. So we're telling a bit of that adventure, getting their community to go on a bit of an adventure there of their own, learning some things about science and about plants, and trying to get them up to date with what we're trying to build, and hopefully, get some more citizen scientists who are eventually going to go out and do some scanning and data collection of their own. So super excited for that. And if anyone, wants to claim any of the rewards or prizes, jump over to Metropolis World, have a go at the quest, and yeah, we're dropping some fun things to those who complete it.
No, I think this is amazing because I think the kind of problem, or maybe not the problem, but the barrier for entry into Web3 and to become make sure that DeSci becomes adopted is having this kind of interactive nature. And so the fact that you guys are almost generating this scavenger hunt, this global scavenger hunt, I mean, within the metaverse world, yes, but as the Plant Gang community is actually going out and going to these different locations and scanning these plants and generating this repository of information that'll be immortalized on the blockchain. I think is a beautiful thing. But before we get too deep into that, Harry, the way I like to kind of start these off is self-introduction. So how, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came into this Plant Gang Web3 space.
Yeah, sure. It's a good place to begin. So, I am a biochemist in training. So, I do have a sciencey background and I've always loved science. But, as someone who's always loved science, I've always been interested also in kind of humanities and these other subjects, which, maybe sometimes conventionally have a bit of a divide between the science. I know a lot of my friends, they would think, oh, I could never be a scientist or because I do this other things. And I've always thought that there should be way more of a connection between everyday people and science, and there shouldn't be such this stigma about you need a PhD or you need all this training to have a go and be involved in science. And so there was those kind of problems that I always saw in research and in science, and then there was all these kind of more entrenched problems of institutional control of data, issues for scientific funding. And so as I was kind of going through this journey as a scientist and started to discover Web3 and decentralized science, I saw answers to lots of these problems. And this was also at the same time where I was really interested in 3D modeling technologies, these kind of technologies that are right at the edge of what they can do, and they're improving every day. So it's a really exciting space to kind of keep track of. So I've always been interested in that. And then I've always known that, everything now is going digital in science. So all of our collections are going online. And as someone who's been very obsessed with plants, I was interested in how are these plant collections going online? And traditionally, for plant specimens, you've got these boring 2D pressings, these dead, no shape, no color, kind of flat as a pancake, and stored in a filing cabinet system called a herbarium. That's kind of how they've been doing this for 250 years. And so, kind of on my journey, interested in all of these different elements, I kind of landed in this perfect storm where I was like, okay, well, we can use 3D modeling and Web3 to address this problem of these boring 2D specimens while engaging kind of citizen scientists across the globe to go out and become connected with science and nature themselves, and kind of split that divide that I've always had a bit of a problem with between scientists and kind of everyday folks that are not really sure how they can get involved in science. And so that's led me down this path, led me into the rainforest of Costa Rica, into Colombia, looking at plants too, and now into an exciting area where we're hopefully able to get other people to start enjoying the technology we have access to and scanning some stuff for themselves, and even collecting that scientific data that we can help them with. So yeah, that's kind of how I've got here, and now it's all just been a fun journey ever since.
That sounds amazing. And I like that you bring up the point that, there is almost this barrier, this hesitancy or intimidation where people kind of break science into two forms. They have the hard sciences where you would, immunology, math, applied sciences. And then you have these soft sciences like sociology and the like, but they still fall into the science category. And it's kind of how do we get them into or to feel comfortable participating in DeSci, because DeSci is not it's not just biomedical sciences or hard sciences, but it's all practices and disciplines that apply the scientific methodology, right? And to a certain extent, that also includes art. And I think that PlantGang, in my opinion, in going through my due diligence on the project, I think you guys sit very sweetly between the realms of science and art, bringing this art on chain, not just on chain, but bringing realistic, like real art on chain, or um, biological art, because these are not like artistic renditions of plants. These are actual scans of real plants, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I love that. I've always thought that science can be cool. It can look nice as well as be, something rational and something useful in research. And so I hope that, yeah, we are sitting nicely in between those two areas where we can capture these beautiful moments because they naturally make themselves art, right? Like you said, these are real things that we're capturing, but these rare blooms and these rare events in nature that we're able to encapsulate as like a moment in time in these 3D models and with this scientific data that lets us not only capture the visual moment in time, but the location, the date, all of that extra information of context to capture these moments in time, you get these really beautiful pieces of art because nature is really beautiful in a lot of these places. And sadly, some of us don't ever get to see these things. And so when they're collected in physical form and taken to these herbariums and, stored in a filing cabinet, not only do they look pretty boring when you pull them out, but they're only available to the people that can visit there. They're not easily accessible. And so we're really keen to be breaking those barriers, showing something artistic and exciting, and bringing people back into nature through these digital assets so they go and engage with some more physical plants too. But yeah, we have our base models as well, of all of our plants, which are these unedited captures from the field. But then we also have these artistic NFT renders where we add a little bit of fun to them and make them a bit more exciting as well on top of kind of base versions. So that's another way we're kind of enjoying playing with the art, playing with NFTs, allowing collectors to own real world assets, but with this fun kind of style that they can then use to purchase them and sponsor research and conservation projects.
Yeah, that's great. I love the notion of, and I think there has been there definitely has been an industry in a realm of science based art, but I think the work that you and other projects like yourself are going to bring forth is it's actually going to be that, right? Is going to be, look at this beautiful Rafflesia, and then you can also tag in all of the scientific metadata and particular interests like publications that are affiliated with this particular plant. All these kind of layerings of information and ownership and tokenization can be built into these infrastructures that are being built for Web3. And I think that's going to change how science is done across the world. It's going to change the impact of this. Ed is here in the art in the audience, and he works in agriculture. And I think that's also easily applicable to this kind of information, right? Getting these agricultural components online, on chain in a 3D perspective that we can all study them from across the world, kind of reducing the barrier to access to these different, sometimes isolated geographical locations and the data and the body of biology that exists there, I think is going to be great. But let me ask you, what can you go into some of the tech that is used by the PlantGang ecosystem to kind of do this kind of work?
Yeah, of course. Can you hear me all right? I'm not seeing little moving squiggles next to my name.
No, no, you sound great.
I'm good. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the tech at PlantGang. So as I said, we're trying to use this pioneering 3D technologies, and so we started this off looking at what different technologies there are. So you've got laser scanning, you've got photogrammetry, you now have NERFs, which are really exciting new technology. And so in our first expedition, we kind of settled on photogrammetry as being the best way. And this is a method just using, loads of image captures of your capturing loads of image of your object, and then you feed that into software which aligns those in 3D space and makes this like render, this photorealistic render of your subject. So that's a really exciting one. We use a very high quality camera and a big strong computer to load it all. But what's exciting is since we've been doing that to generate these super high quality renders for our kind of in-house PlantGang produced ones, we also can now explore what the community can produce. And what's great is there's loads of progress being made in just being able to make scans from your phone. So we've actually just been given some codes for an early access beta to this company called Luma AI, their 3D modeling technology. And this is like amazing for capturing plants specifically because it doesn't struggle with reflections. But I won't go too technical, but the great thing is this is a technology that you can use on your phone. And so what we now have the power to do is, as well as going out on our own expeditions and supporting the capture of data and these 3D models, we can now empower others through teaching them about scanning, teaching them about taking basic scientific data and, activating them globally, whether they live out in a desert, near a rainforest, by the Great Barrier Reef, and go get them making whatever scans they are interested in with the natural assets they have near them and kind of facilitating that. And eventually we're building out our website now, kindly funded by Filecoin. And the whole aim is on the website, we have this section, this community corner, where people can upload their 3D models and their associated scientific metadata so that we can have this decentralized, data storage of all these models and data, but we can also start to, potentially have collectors from across the globe upload them to us. We can help them make them into these NFTs and allow collectors to almost sponsor this global research by purchasing these NFTs, choosing which collectors' work they like the most, what kind of scans and what kind of data they think is most inspiring to them. And by purchasing those NFTs, they can sponsor that research. And so I'm really excited to be able to then engage these citizen scientists as well as doing those in-house kind of data collection of our own.
That's really good. I think, it's interesting that how you tie it together with the funding of particular research, and I definitely do want to delve into that. But just to take a little step back, so the implementation of this tech from Luna AI, because you mentioned that originally, like when you went into your expedition into Costa Rica, you have very particular tech, high-end tech, and that kind of is almost probably inhibitory for the average person to use. But Luma AI Labs is developing a software, or they have a tech stack that then everybody can use to kind of generate these 3D images that then gets fed into the PlantGang ecosystem.
So, yeah, so the thing is, with even the photogrammetry that we did on our first expedition, you can, get pretty good quality, right, with just, a DSLR or your phone camera. But it's this like kind of rendering of these after that, if you want to render it yourself, is going to take maybe a bit more of a beefy computer. But fortunately, companies like Polycam and these other apps that you can get on your phone, they do the rendering for you on their servers. And so now it is very much an average person can use either Polycam for photogrammetry or, yeah, this company Luma AI for NERFs, which is another 3D kind of technology to generate these models just on their phones. Now, we went and used the highest tech we had possible because we wanted to prove this concept, which had never been done before, these plant scans with data. We wanted to prove it to the highest quality that we could and make sure that this first expedition was done to the highest standard. But yeah, like you say, it's really exciting now that the technology is coming down to a level where we can get everyday people involved. And so that's something we're launching right now in our Discord, is some competitions over the next few weeks where we're going to teach people how to use this software on their phones. And if they want to use their computer, they can upgrade and go a level higher. But the entry level stuff just with a mobile phone is amazing nowadays. And it's kind of a little bit more about the skill than the actual hardware and being able to understand how the technology works. And so we're going to educate people on the scanning, but this is a double-edged thing. We also want to educate them on the taking of 3D, taking of data, this scientific metadata. So if they're out in their natural environment scanning a plant or a fungus, we want to help them with how do you identify which species that is? How do you identify the associated species? Record the geolocation, record even the phenology. And what's nice is some of this data that's traditionally taken with plant specimens is not too crazy. It doesn't require big, crazy machines. It's not too hard for us to teach other people to do, but it's still super valuable when collected on this large scale across the world. And importantly, when it's coupled with those 3D models, it's giving them that scientific context. So that's kind of the approach we want to take, is teaching people both this ways to do things, and then letting them out and go to find whatever specimens they want, and share them with our community. We can help identify them. We can help them suggest ways to improve their scans. But the great thing is, yeah, the technology is now at a level where we can all get involved, and it's only going to get better with time. So we're at the edge of the curve, and it's only going to get easier. So it's very exciting to be at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that emulates a lot of the entirety of the DeSci space. There's so much new tech coming out here. I think we sit on a bed of revolutionary tech, and we've only scratched not even the surface, just the barely veneer on top of it to what the potential is out underneath and how we can change things. Um, in terms of the Plant Gang team, so you talk about how there's going to be almost an educational component to that. Can you talk about the rest of the team? Who do you guys have advisors? Who there but beyond you is helping build this out?
Yeah, so I mean, on the educational side of the tech, we have Steve, who is also known as Immersive E, Steve Flanagan, and before he was working with us, he spent the last 2 years scanning coral reefs with the BBC. So he owns an underwater drone and is extremely qualified for doing some plant scans. So it was amazing to grab him and get him to come out to Costa Rica with myself and get these initial scans. And so me and him are working on the best way to educate people on this technology. We also have some brilliant community members such as Fancy and Mark Date, and they were these people were like co-founders in Protein, if you know this Web3 community, and now are running big projects of their own. But they're really interesting, to having the team to give us that kind of high level advice and kind of overviews on different ideas we're having. We have Domingo, who's the creative director at Jump, if you know that project, and he's the one who works on our artistic renders and some of our branding, and he's an absolutely incredible 3D artist too. And who else? We have Tim Regen Friend, who is a very young guy but incredibly skilled in Discord, Notion, and community building and operations. And he's the one that keeps the ship sailing all the time when I'm busy doing other things as well. So he's been an absolutely great person to have in the team. And we've got some other people now getting involved in working groups that we've launched. So people, if they're interested in joining on the marketing side, on the community side, on the physical research side, we now have these working groups launching that have started to churn up where we can discuss these different areas and people can get directly involved if they're interested. And the marketing and the community one have already been launched, and we're really excited to now launch the research one now that we have access to some of these early 3D modeling technology codes to give out to some people and to kind of engage them, and also teach them how to maybe go out and find some biologists and find some other people to get involved who maybe don't know about Web3 and don't know and never going to stumble upon this project. But we want to be able to say, hey, how would you like to try this 3D modeling technology next time you go out in the field and see what we can do here. So that's kind of the team at the moment, but we hope to keep it growing and bringing on some skilled people in all different areas as we expand out.
I mean, that definitely sounds like a well fleshed out team of multidisciplinary participants, right? And to go back to your last point, I do very much think that projects like your own, the ones that kind of abstract away the Web3 notion and it's just go out and have fun, go out and do what you're already doing, and then we'll deal with the back end Web3 acts. I think that's what's going to bring in a lot of entrance into the space and make it much more amenable for people to want to be here. And to kind of before we jump on to the next topic, you talk about how one of your participants, I think Steve, you said he does underwater coral scanning, and so in that same vein of thought, is there any interest in not necessarily moving beyond plants, but integrating scanning of other biospecimens into the PlantGang ecosystem?
Yeah, so I've ever since he mentioned his underwater drone, my brain has been ticking over on that. And for sure, our aims are to, bring nature on chain. So not just plant specimens. We want to go to funguses. They're very nice scanning subjects and also very interesting to capture. They have amazing color and form, just like plants. But we also, yeah, want to go to coral reefs and do this underwater scanning, which this technology, this nerf technology is really good for because when you have the reflections of things like water, something like photogrammetry actually really struggles to make 3D models. And so we now have a really cool opportunity to kind of go and do those projects, which we wanted to always do, that involve coral reefs and scanning these other areas. I mean, for coral reefs themselves, I really want to do a scan where we make a big model of an area of reef and then use it to slice it up and sell these NFTs to people that want to fund restoration of that specific area of coral reef. And then we can keep scanning it as they're funding the restoration so that they can have, evolving 3D model NFTs of that reef to see in real time the progress that they are helping fund. And so, yeah, we definitely have ideas to go beyond. we'll be building out multiple collection areas on our website, but in the interest of, staying focused and fleshing out the idea properly, we've, stayed pretty on top of the herbarium and the virtual herbarium as our kind of first flagship part of the project, with aims to expand out, maybe bring in other communities. I'm speaking with other communities that already are very interested in coral reefs and that kind of work, and maybe, integrating their expertise with these 3D modeling technologies so that we can expand out in a way that allows us to cooperate with the rest of this amazing DeSci ecosystem too.
Yeah, no, I think that would be really cool. The fact that you guys are, I mean, in a certain way, freezing these specimens in time, but from a systemic or ecosystem perspective, like being able to generate, let's say, um, an NFT collection that shows the, let's say, remediation of a particular coral ecosystem over time through this funneling of funds into, ecosystem and conservation research. I think that'd be a beautiful application of your guys' platform.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone knows any coral reef fans, let us know, because it's almost like there's so much that we want to do, but I only have so many hours that I have to dedicate them to certain aspects of the project. And so I'm really excited by the idea of bringing in people that are interested in these different areas, and we can kind of help just facilitate with our website and the technology aspect that we understand. But people can, lean on their own science and their own knowledge, because for certain scans, maybe they understand that the best scientific metadata to collect for, say, a coral reef scan is these pollutants and this water levels and these things that record how many animals were in that area, or whatever it might be. And maybe that's, not something that's our expertise yet. And so it's really great to build on other people's knowledge and find a way for them to maybe incorporate this 3D aspect into their current, research pipeline, wherever they're already researching these things.
Well, yeah, well, then to that end, I would definitely suggest you guys shout out to or reach out to New Atlantis DAO. So they're a eco-friendly and bioremediation platform DAO that is looking for marine ecosystem um, homeostasis. So they're definitely a group with which to reach out to. A more nascent group is the Sea Society, which is very new. They're based out of El Salvador, and they're also interested in doing this same kind of NFT modeling that can then funnel funds into bioremediation and ecosystem and conservation efforts in the ocean. So those are two definite groups that I've actually already sent your way, but you should reach out to on your own end.
Amazing. Yeah, I've heard of New Atlantis DAO, but I will definitely check out the Sea Society.
Yeah, so in relation to PlantGang, does PlantGang fall under the DAO infrastructure? Like how do you guys operate?
So currently, there's been a lot of building, and so we've been unable to kind of really share what we wanted with our community for a while, and have been kind of working away at these things. And now we're at this exciting stage where we do kind of have some stuff to show. We have all of our plans for the future fleshed out. And so now it is kind of operating somewhat in that DAO sphere, but we'd like to move further towards it in the future. Once we have members with NFTs able to maybe, vote on where the areas of research they want to fund are. So we might, do an expedition in one area and find that there's a few research projects in that region that we could possibly fund. And we can use our community to collectively decide that. They might want to then collectively decide which plants they want to scan, whether it's, the largest flower in the world that's only found in these certain mountain regions, and we go and fund just an expedition to capture that in its perfect form, or whether we want to do a whole collection of, orchids from Costa Rica. Or so that's kind of, these things that we really want to be community driven. We definitely want to explore using the DAO infrastructure for that. But at the moment, it's kind of like a bit of a balance of that and a bit of a kind of centralized it within working groups. But this is just based on, who has the time and energy to get involved. And everyone who does and wants to do something, they kind of, get involved how they want, whether they want to write about conservation and we can help highlight that, or if they want to do some video editing or branding or whatever element it might be. We're kind of, just bringing in people, seeing what skills they have, and letting them share in building this vision that we have.
Yeah, then that sits right along with the ethos of the Web3 space. Yeah, I definitely imagine you guys flourishing into a DAO because, pulling together these disparate groups of individuals, right? You wouldn't necessarily have to send people out to Costa Rica. You could have the Costa Rican community or the Ghanaian community or wherever have you community kind of do that for themselves and upload their data to you. I think it's very interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to jump in one more thing,
Oh, go ahead.
just for the kind of future, exactly, and that future of decentralizing more and more, the aim is to have these communities sparking up with local communities doing their own scans, collecting their own data, making that value in the regions where they already understand their natural lands, they're the natural stewards and protectors, so we don't have to send out teams to go and scan these areas and kind of extract the value there. We can empower them to do it. And the aim is to have eventually a plant token that is that kind of tool for like UBI for these different communities and payment for the work that we're doing, work that they're doing. But it's baby steps. It's get this all established, get this network of data and models coming into our website, and then once that's done, we can then start to think about tokenization and how we really decentralize this. But it's all exciting, but I think it's key to take it one bit by bit so that you can make sure what you're building is has some strong foundations.
And this is exactly why I love the DeSci space slightly over the DeFi space. I feel like in DeSci, and I appreciate you taking this measured approach of building utility and foundation before just launching an NFT for the sake or token for the sake of it, right? It's utility driven, it's impact driven, and I think that's what's going to make it such that our space is a little bit more resistant to some of the problems that exist in the other Web3 spaces. At least I hope so. Um, so it's always great to hear founders have that measured approach of let's get our ducks in a row, and then we can deal with any overlying kind of cherry on top aspects like tokens and whatnot. Um, and so I have to wonder. So you made reference to the fact that now we have the tech and we have obviously the Web3 brings a decentralized aspect to it. But what has been why now? So what has been the limitation that has stopped? Because 3D imaging and compilation imaging has existed for a while. How come that never kind of leaked its way into this same space before you guys?
So plants are actually a tricky one. I've always loved plants, been obsessed with plants, and realized like, okay, so these 2D pressings for me, they're not good enough. There's no color, there's no shape. They're good for physical research, but you can't pull them up in a lecture and let some people really explore what a plant is. You can't drop them into an amazing research paper and have that 3D model spinning that really allows the reader to understand what specimen they're thinking of. And so I kind of was thinking we have to change this with plants, but actually plants are tricky, right? They move in the wind, they are very shiny surfaces. And so they've actually been pretty hard to 3D model. And so lots of the previous assets for plants you've seen are all kind of, artistic representations. They're someone in a 3D modeling software giving it their best go. And so you've never really had these kind of photo real versions until, Steve with our setup in Costa Rica was using cross polarization and special methods in order to, stop light reflections, and we're using special methods to try and make sure that the plant doesn't move around and change location during the image capture. But fortunately, with these other new technologies, and as this continues to improve, we're now, as I discussed, lowering that barrier, so it's getting more and more possible each day. And so that's really exciting for us because we don't want to have to do this with our high tier tech when it could be done by everyday people. And so that's kind of why now in that way. And then the Web3 aspect, the kind of ability to change the funding mechanisms on this global funding level that we discussed is great. But I also am interested in the data storage itself in a decentralized way is really exciting because you've got this untamperable format of storing your data where it can never be changed, it can't be lost. Like a lot of these sadly traditional scientific websites don't have enough funding to be properly managed, to be properly curated, and so they're very hard to navigate, but you can also see them crash frequently, and you can lose that data. Whereas what we can have really excitingly is, the data associated with our specimens, say from Costa Rica, we have them down as being collected and authenticated by Orlando Vargas, who was the lead scientific researcher at this institute, who came and double checked all of our data and made sure that we were identifying these things correctly, because everything from different regions is slightly technical, and you kind of have those local expertise that are really important to make sure that everything's being recorded correctly. And because that's all on chain, you can trace all of that, and you can know that this was identified by this specific expert. And it's really exciting to know that all of that data will be immortalized and protected, and especially the 3D models on IPFS by Filecoin, so that as we're in these environmentally challenging times going forward, where some of these species might even be lost, we know we've captured these moments and the essence of what they were. And the aim is never to capture the essence of them so that they can be lost in time, but if we can capture them, make sure we're immortalizing them, and then use that to fund protection of the IRL specimens, then that is really something that excites me.
That is exciting and beautiful. You guys are essentially generating a digital fossil record for the future, right? Something that in a time capsule format, people hundreds, and thousands of years, if we're still here, if we stop messing around with the planet, um, we have this record of all these species, or as many species as we've been able to collect forever, right? The blockchain exists forever, whether we're here to maintain it or not. I think that's extremely valuable and something that is often overlooked. And the capacity to kind of layer on the data. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, another exciting aspect I like is in our website, we're building out this kind of almost heat map, which will have like the entire globe. And so different collectors from different regions, as they're uploading the specimens that they've found with the geolocations of where they found them and this kind of data, it all goes into this map, so that as kind of a viewer, you might not even know what specimen you specifically want to look at that day, but you might go, oh, I wonder what's coming out of Brazil this week, and I wonder what people are scanning over in Peru. And you can go and find a collector that you like out there, and have a look at what they've been capturing. And so, like these other websites like iNaturalist, if anyone's familiar with this, which is kind of a citizen science, collect a bit of data, take a photo of a plant or some kind of animal when you're out in the field. These kind of websites already exist, but they don't really have any incentive to the people that are using them. But the people just post on them because they love nature and they want to show it off. And so that's something that's amazing with a lot of scientists. They're happy to just do this for the love of it. But we kind of believe that, yeah, if people are happy to do it for the love of it, it's amazing. But how can we, thank them for that, and get collectors maybe to start thinking, oh, this is my favorite collector from the Peruvian Amazon has released another set of models. Let me go see what they've done, and oh, I want to purchase that one because that's my favorite. And then that way, it's like they can be doing this stuff that interests them anyway, but also getting a bit of acknowledgement and income from it. So super excited for that.
No, that's great. I think no, I don't think any scientist, or maybe not any, but I think most scientists, myself included, go into science for the love of science and not necessarily the payday of science, because there's not much of that. But I think you touch upon a really good point, because oftentimes scientists get jaded because there is no sustainable way of doing something you love that allows you to kind of live your day to day, and being able to develop these infrastructures through Web3, particularly as it relates to botanists and botany and plants and conservation and real life biological specimens. I very much appreciate that as a scientist. I think that's going to go a long way to making people's quality of lives much better, making scientists infinitely happier of being able to do what they want as a living, for an actual living. Um, and so that's great. And what I was going to say before is what I think is great in terms of this fossil record that you guys are keeping, or this digital fossil record you guys are keeping, is that you can layer on this actual data. So if somebody does this some scientific experiment on a particular plant, they can layer that into the 3D model and keep creating this depth of information surrounding this one individual plant, and it'll be just last there forever. What I'm really looking forward to, and we talked about this previously, Harry, is integration with things like CT scans and MRI scans that give both an internal and external visualization. So something like, if anybody's ever watched an Avengers movie where you generate this 3D model that you can swipe your hands left and right and kind of dissect inwards. So you get both the outside and the inside, and even can zoom in at the microscopic level through maybe integration with microscopes. I think there's a lot of potential here to change how we do science without necessarily having to disturb the bioecosystem that these individual assets are coming from.
Exactly. No, I mean, microscope 3D scans would be very, very exciting. And that's just about, getting this voice out here of what we're trying to build and seeing what kind of people get interested, because we're not just about photogrammetry, we're not just about nerfs, we're not just about laser scanning. It's about what is best for the specific specimen, what is best for capturing nature in the most interesting way. And so different people can turn up with their different skills, and we can, maybe turn them into scientists, or maybe they're scientists that we turn into scanners. And that's something that it's very exciting. So yeah, the first 3D modeled, we'll put our phones to the end of a microscope and do a little 3D scan through that of a cell or something, and that'll be. I think that NFT should sell fast for sure. But what I love about the rest of the NFTs too is there's obviously the clinical science side, but there's also such a fun element of being able to do fun Web3 things, right? So lots of NFT collections are for scarcity. They're like, oh, we're only going to have 1,000 of these. That's all we're going to release. And that's just how it is. So that's what makes them valuable, right? But it's what's cool with real world assets like this is the orchids that we scan, or these certain specimens that we scan, they have their own natural scarcity. They have their own rarity in real life, how hard it was to go out and trek and find them. That's their own scarcity, and so we can play into that. And as people collect different specimens, and they maybe have to trek further to find them, and do more to capture them, those ones will have their inherent kind of value increased by that, and we don't even have to force anything on top of that. We can even play around with fun stuff like, imagine minting an NFT, but the mint only lasts as long as that flower, say, blooms. And so I really like the idea of being able to not have to do this forced scarcity and play into this natural scarcity that is living in the world around us when we're thinking about using these NFTs for funding things.
That's actually a really good point. That is absolutely a really good point. And that's like, how do you bring laws of the universe, law of the physical universe into this digital space? And I think that's actually a really good point of how to do that. I'd like to shout out Grassland, which is doing this a similar, not similar, but they're trying to tackle the same thing. How do you bring real world aspects and real world environments into a digital space through AI? And I think you guys are doing a very good job of doing it yourselves. I think that's beautiful. It's a really neat idea, right? Having the minting only for the duration of that particular bloom, or whatever rare specimen. There's only one because somebody only found one, or it's been extremely difficult to get to it. I think that's great. That's a beautiful version of gamification, to how to kind of enhance these things. So I have to ask, you mentioned partnerships with like Web3 entities like Metropolis World, and maybe Web2 entities like Luma AI. Have there been other interesting partnerships or people knocking at your door to kind of work with you, NGOs, conservation organizations, and the like? Can you speak upon that?
So yeah, fortunately we have that amazing link with a metaverse space, so we can build out this educational 3D environment down the line. And we've got that link with Filecoin for our decentralized storage, so we can make sure that all this data and these models are protected throughout time in that way. But as for like other ones, we really are open to some more partnerships. I mean, this has kind of been something that I've been building with this small team, and it's had to, because there's so many elements to it, and it seemed to just be getting more complicated, more interesting, and we're discovering more things we want to do as we were going. It's kind of actually been something where we haven't opened it up until fairly recently. And so I think there's probably a few partnerships and interesting kind of rabbit holes we haven't went down yet. You could integrate it with a fashion brand where maybe they build all their clothes out of sustainable environmental materials, and in their kind of metaverse, say runways, they have, real world plants on the tables that we've scanned. And, you can explore different interesting things we can do. But as for partnerships we really want to get going is with, botanical gardens. You can imagine going to a botanical garden, and instead of just looking at the plant specimen when you're there, you could maybe scan a QR code at the specimen and collect a 3D model of it too. And then when, as a kid, maybe you've went to that botanical garden, you go home and you're like, okay, I collected 12 of those as 3D models, and now I can look at a bit more educational information about them. It's playing into that kind of Pokemon Go collection mentality that we all have, while still then, subtly feeding in that education and making sure that these people are getting this interesting, dynamic kind of visual education. And so this is something we're really interested to do. I've actually been kind of holding out on reaching out to these people until I really felt like we had, everything in line with the website and the technology. But, we have that funding now. We're building all that stuff. And so it's probably about time that we got some of these other groups involved. So definitely we'll be sending out those emails. And if anyone else wants to get involved in that, they sure can.
It is definitely a beautiful problem, and almost, in my opinion, a marker of future success when you can say, like, we've been so busy exploring and stumbling into all these interesting avenues that we want to kind of explore, that we haven't even really had the opportunity to think about or worry about partnerships per se. I think that's a very beautiful situation or kind of problem to be in, because I do think you guys are going to be infinitely successful. I think that the concept of like the botanical gardens integrating with something like augmented reality, having that Pokemon Go aspect where you can throw on glasses and you have this beautiful, rare, bloomed plant in your quote unquote vicinity. I think those are like very low hanging fruit, interesting avenues to explore. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to partake in that for sure.
Exactly. We just got to not scare the likes of Kew Gardens off by mentioning, NFTs and them going straight to FTX. We got to say like,
Right.
hey, no, this DeSci stuff, this is cool. Don't worry. We're trying to do it right over in this corner of the space. But
That's right.
yeah, that's always a fun one, exploring those kind of conversations with people who don't understand anything about NFTs or crypto apart from what a Bitcoin is or something.
Yeah, I think we're going to be a big component of the rebranding of Web3 and of quote unquote crypto. I think we're gonna have our work cut out for us, but I think a lot of the utility driven in this space is going to help reshape people's perspectives. And so, as we approach the top of the hour, I do want to give time for people to ask questions, but I have two final questions for you. The first is, we talked about what's coming down the pipeline. Is there anything else that we should expect from PlantGang's roadmap that you maybe haven't mentioned yet?
Okay, let me have a think. So, I mean, immediate things. If you're listening to this and you're like, I want in, I want to try this, maybe, you could get more involved centrally and like, oh, I want to be actually in the project in marketing or whatever, in the working groups. But if you just want to think, oh, next time I'm out on a walk, I want to scan something, I want to collect some data, I want to share it with people and, down the line, upload it to our website and things like this. Over the next few weeks, we're doing, some classes teaching people about scanning over in our Discord, and then also some, lessons on basic data collection. And so that's maybe an exciting thing. And we will be launching a competition after that. So you can come and win some, rewards if you get some prats under your belt and can be one of the top scanners. But I'm sure there'll be a big level of a big range of quality. So there'll be no pressure to smash it too much. You can come and just see what you can come up with. And then yeah, we're doing this quest at the moment. So if you want to get involved and win some rewards there and hear a bit more about the project, you can also do that. But further down the line, it's going to be this website coming out and hopefully some future expeditions that are in-house PlantGang exhibitions. So I've been speaking a lot about launching these big citizen science movements, which I'm really excited for. But we also, are going to launch some maybe a bit more technical expeditions in-house. And so these are ones where the community will guide, where we're funding and what we're doing, but we can maybe, lean on some bit more technical scientific data that maybe, the average individual across the globe can't collect themselves. And so one of those at the moment we're trying to work on is to go out to an indigenous community in Peru in the Amazon and scan their medicinal plant forest that is in their native forest using the the money benefit generated from this NFT sales to help with their biodiversity in that area, since they've had dams built upstream which are messing up their water supply and killing a lot of their biodiversity. We want to help sponsor the building of aquifers and even maybe some eco tourism kind of areas there, so that they can kind of combat these problems they're having. And we're working via an NGO to kind of set that up, make sure that it's all done appropriately when you're dealing with these communities, as that's obviously a really important aspect to get right. But they're really keen to share their traditional wisdoms with the world, make sure they're not lost in the next generations. They don't want to kind of lose this knowledge they have about their plant forest. And so we want to give them an avenue to collect this data around the traditional medical properties of these plants. And this is data that isn't anywhere in research papers because it's passed down through generations, and it's kind of just spoke about and known within these communities, whereas they're really happy to share it with the world. And so we want to kind of help facilitate that. So maybe that's an expedition you'll hopefully see coming out in the future too.
Damn, I almost wanna like tag along and join this expedition. I think these things are going to be fantastic. The focus on impact driven um, aspects for helping these different communities and ecologies. I think that's absolutely beautiful. And so to kind of round out all of the amazing things that PlantGang are doing, let me ask you, Harry, what's your definition of success for PlantGang? Like looking 10, 15, 20, 50 years down the road, if you can look back at that, where do you want to see PlantGang, or where do you think the epitome of PlantGang is going to be?
Okay. Oh, 10, 15 years down the line. Okay, I want a Discord that's so active and confusing that I don't even know where to begin when I log in. I want people, to be using the platform that we hopefully provide to upload these models and data to be completely decentralized. I want, models to be popping up from all across the world and people engaging with each other's models, engaging with what specimens they're collecting. I hopefully want it to, have branch beyond plants. I want there to be specimens of corals and reefs. I want there to be funguses and these virtual fungariums and virtual reefs to be built out, as well as the herbarium. So my dream is that, yeah, it's really the technology is at the level where everyone is just going about their own way of doing this, but just using our kind of infrastructure that we've provided to help them, make this something that they can actually do and maybe even earn, income from, and have this safe place to store this data and these models. But I really want to be, hopefully by that time, taking a real step back and just enjoying facilitating and educating people on the best ways to get involved. And then once they understand that, letting them kind of, make of it what they will and go out and scan and collect data on whatever they like. So that's the aim, is to make ourselves a bit redundant and hopefully just be, facilitators.
As any good parent should, right? And I think all of these DAOs, these organizations, PlantGang in particular, these are almost independent organisms that we may have started, we may have seeded, but they should take on a life of their own and grow and mature and diverge and iterate as they should. And I definitely see that that's going to happen with PlantGang and hopefully with the rest of the DAOs in this space. Um, so that's beautiful. Ed, I brought you up. You always have something very interesting to say. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jelani. I was on a spaces earlier this week with Harry, and this is really exciting. I come from the regenerative agriculture movement that's been created by farmers, and we have our 5 principles of soil health that are universal, and we can talk to anybody around the world, a farmer that wants to transition from chemical ag. But we also have a component called context. And one of the issues that is very difficult is if somebody contacts us from a completely different area of the world and we find that like cover crops and companion planting is just a huge benefit to regenerative agriculture and to soil health and to food diversity. And somebody will ask, well, what should I plant for a cover crop? And of course, we just don't know what grows in their area. And we're also very interested in epigenetics. We want to use plants that are either native plants or have been well adapted varieties of crops. And so we just don't know what grows there. So if we can have people, either citizen scientists that work with farmers in their areas and stuff, to be able to take pictures of things and that give us the abilities that PlantGang is talking about, to really be able to see just how a plant is structured. A particular plant in their area can show us a lot about how it'll function in the ecosystem, how it'll collect rain. We can also look at plants and how they react or look under stresses, whether it be droughts or rains. So that can really help to sort out. We also look at how crops need different types of crops have different nutrient needs and biome needs. So we learn what types of varieties of cover crops or companion plantings need to be planted before the intended crop is going to be planted. So, and even in microscope work, I mean, I've seen on like Facebook, there's lots of citizen who just have a hobby of liking to look under the microscope and taking pictures of stuff, and they go out and collect samples from soil or water around the area, and then they isolate organisms. And of course, in our soil health testing, we're starting to look into metagenomics. So understanding different organisms and classifying them at least into categories of what they do in the soil. So there's just so much exciting in getting into better resolution. In fact, I even heard a couple days ago that some cell phone company is coming out with one that has a camera that's beyond sort of macro, that they're calling a microscope. And, it maybe isn't going to be to the degree of a real microscope work, but at least in the field, it might be able to get a little closer type image. And so that's future potential. There's so much here that could benefit just land stewardship, or certainly in regenerative agriculture. So thank you so much for doing this work. It's really great to hear.
No, it's great. Thank you. Thanks for discussing that. No, it's really interesting to hear what you're doing too, and think about, how these decentralized networks of scientists will hopefully be quite powerful for other people to maybe tap into, and think, okay, we're building this, maybe in your case, we're doing this regenerative agriculture in this specific region. Let's have a look on the, say, specimen heat map about not only what plants are growing around there we could potentially use, but maybe talk to some of those collectors that were in that area. And as we were discussing earlier about maybe, getting a bit more about the DAO side of things and really decentralizing out, you might have little communities from certain regions that kind of have their own micro groups where they discuss their local agriculture. And so that could hopefully, be useful. And the exciting thing is expanding out on that data collection also. So you're talking about, much more technical data than classic herbarium data that's taken with specimens. We're really excited to delve into those layers too, using some of that technology in the future that the DeSci kind of ecosystem is building, right? So this node infrastructure and this kind of way of decentrally storing data, we can attach that kind of data to specimens and get even more and more complicated, like complex data down the line. So generate more value for everyone who's able to see it on this kind of decentralized network. So no, thank you for sharing that. And it's great to have you here again today.
Definitely shout out to DeSci Labs and DeSci Nodes. It's exactly what I envision, right? These scientific articles that have this NFT visual art component, as well as the data itself, but also the general metadata, the sunshine, the lumens, the lux of that particular plant at that particular time. All these different aspects, I think, are going to really change how we deal with science, and also the kind of information that is being unlocked. There's so much information that exists in the world that is just siloed, not necessarily, maliciously or on purpose, but it's just because you, as somebody who's a hobbyist that goes out and takes a picture, you don't think of uploading this to this space. You don't think of all these things, and kind of providing these gateways to unlock all this abundance of information that is almost like, why haven't we tapped into this yet? Is going to be great. NTT2D, I see you're up here. Please feel free to hop in and say whatever you want to say.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's nothing to do. But yeah, I just kind of learned more about decentralized science just through you guys recently, and I played the game through Metropolis World, and I just thought, wow, this is an amazing idea, and this is going to be so good for humanity. Everything Ed spoke about completely resonates with me. Whether it's just how can we connect everything and everything we learn about plants or outdoors or um, even the epigenetics or the environment, the ecosystem, and how can we kind of connect it globally, because it's different from everywhere we live of the information we learn and what we find. And there's an educational aspect that people want but don't have access to, or that it's independent of one another. And there hasn't been anybody that's really connected it, or if you're going to learn about it, it's in a 2D format, and sometimes it's kind of a little bit more difficult to grasp. But if what you guys are developing is more of a portal, and when we enter this portal, it can be a business aspect of agriculture, but it can also be an educational aspect of learning about species of plants, taxonomy, whatever it is that somebody is looking for, or even like a museum of learning about all these different plants that maybe we don't see within our own of where we live. Um, but I think more importantly is that it's going to be recorded on the blockchain, and this allows us to take a snapshot of the biodiversity at that particular point in time. And if anything were ever to happen to any of these species or these crops that we're discovering, we can actually track back saying, hey, it was here during this time, but it's no longer present. But it's also a way just for us to kind of historically track what's going on. And I think there's a lot of power to that. There's also a lot of experts that can be sharing what they know, which has never been connected before in a global way, I think. And so, kind of like what Ed was talking about, like farming and different techniques, and what can we learn, or oral tradition of what is medicinal and what don't we know about it, or what if we eventually start to get um, the genetics and we upload it, and how do we share this data? How do we track what's the change, what has mutated within the genome of certain plants? And it's just like tangents of when we say like what we're looking for as this goes along. But I think it's just super cool that you guys are developing this, and there's so many avenues that can be applied. But yeah, I'm definitely a big I like what you guys are doing, and I definitely just want to keep following you guys and learn more about it. And I grew up in an age where there was encyclopedias where you had to learn, where you had to go to a library to learn, where you had to go to, then you went to Google to learn, or you go to YouTube. But this is going to be next level to be able to learn something in 3D. Like I've gone out and collected mushrooms before, but even collecting mushrooms, you had to be trained, you had to look for spores, you had to do spore testing. But if we can do it in a virtual simulation and kind of learn about it there before we go out there and go foraging wherever we're going, there's a whole lot more value, or just even knowing which plants around us are poisonous that we might not be aware of. So it makes us a lot more aware as adventurers or travelers of where we're of where we're going. Say I want to plan a trip somewhere, but I'm not aware of what plants. It'll give me a richer environment of what I'm aware of if I can actually learn about it ahead of time. Sometimes you have to read about things through Travel Planet or whatever it is. But if there's a way where we can learn about these things ahead of time, because we only see what we know. So being like a mycologist or like looking at mushrooms myself, like I didn't realize all these mushrooms existed until I learned about them, right? Like the mushroom for that you see in the Mario Brothers, that's called Amanita muscaria. Like I wouldn't have known that unless I've learned about it. But yeah, I think there will be a group of people who would be very attracted to what you guys are doing, and I think it's just overall it's good for humanity. So continue doing what you guys are doing, and yeah, definitely continue to follow you guys.
Awesome. You say you're a mycologist? I think you should hop into the Discord. I want to start scanning some more fungi, so could definitely do with some of your knowledge, I'm sure. On that note, I did just drop into the comments for this chat just like a little intro to us on Notion, and then the Discord for anyone who does want to get involved with any of those, competitions that we're doing, or kind of lessons on scanning and data collection and stuff. But obviously, no pressure on jumping in. But I just wanted to share that in case. But yeah, thanks for talking about your kind of interest in the project, and it's exciting to see that you came over from like the Metropolis World Quest, because some of the folks over there might not necessarily be scientists or kind of or even knowledgeable on DeSci at all, and so it's really exciting to be able to try and bring them into this side of Web3 and see whether maybe it clicks a little bit with them and they start to think, oh, this is a pretty cool application of blockchain technology. So I'm glad that it worked in this case for sure.
Harry's very kind. I'm going to apply the pressure. Do go join their Discord. Do go join their platform. You could do it, soft shield through the DeSci World platform as well. Where through our dashboard where we list all the different DeSci projects. But yeah, no, I think PlantGang and other similar projects are going to be the gateways that allow people to come in, and none to do to your particular point, right? Being able to generate this data, this information in a digestible format, something that is interesting. I mean, I love to read, but you notice that people tend to veer nowadays more towards interaction. And so having this metaverse, this virtual reality where you can kind of learn by default, I think is going to go a long way for that. So thank you for bringing up that point. If there are no other questions or commentaries for PlantGang and Harry, I would officially like to thank everybody for coming in, spending this Friday with us and to learn more about this project. As always, please open your DMs because we will be contacting you to drop POAPs for listening into DeSci Rising episode. You can also watch, if you're interested, you can also watch previous episodes of DeSci Rising on our DeSci World YouTube channel. And if you'd like to support us, same way as if you would like to support PlantGang, please go out and purchase or get in contact to see how you can cop one of their NFTs. They're for a great cause. They will be linked to conservation efforts beyond just their beauty. So please do go check out those. If you want to check out ours as well, we at DeSci World have our microbes NFTs. Very similar concept to PlantGangs. These are actual microbe images. Some of them are artist renditions, but most of them come from actual data put together, and they're going to play an important role in our DeSci world and wider ecosystem. So please do go and check those out. And so if there's nothing else, again, everybody, thank you for coming. Harry, I will be in contact with you. I want to go on an expedition.
Let's do it. I'll take you to the rainforest.
Hell yes, I love that.
I can act like I know what I'm doing. I've survived a few trips, so we're ready. But no, I just want to say as well, thank you all for coming and like listening about the project. I'm super inspired to be able to share it with people and get some hopefully positive feedback like we have from those who spoke. And so yeah, feel free to join the Discord and get involved any way you want. And even go out scanning and taking data yourself, and you can release some NFTs with us down the line if that's what you fancy.
Actually, on that point, Harry, right before we close, is there any intention of developing an app that will just automatically kind of download things to the PlantGang database or whatever?
Oh, no, I would love an app, to be fair. I think for right now, we're trying to build out all this infrastructure for the website, make sure that runs properly. And, we're using the third-party 3D modeling softwares to do the 3D modeling generation. And then we kind of like collect all that and add the scientific data in. But down the line, I would love an app where we integrated more of that stuff ourselves. But, as we discussed, baby steps, build it properly, and then keep building. So for now, we're keeping it it's still enough of a push, but semi-sensible amount of building. But yeah, I'd love an app down the future. We'll see.
I'm sure there are many app builders who are going to be listening to this. So if you do want to help PlantGang and build out their app, definitely go reach out to them. So, all right, guys, with that, I'm going to close off the space. Again, thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys next Friday at the same time for our next episode of DeSci Rising. Take it easy, guys.